Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and today I have Julie Smith and Glenn Harper here, and they are entrepreneurs, but also they've scaled their businesses. And before I say any more, why don't you introduce yourself to us?
Yeah, so my name is Julie Smith, and I have two daughters, and I think we all love a little bit of a CPA consulting firm, which then started into a Power CPA, which helps consult CPA firms. We also have a podcast, which is Empowering Entrepreneurs, again, just talking about that lonely world of being an entrepreneur, which is kind of what you do. And then we also started Pure Tax, which is a 1040 tax firm as well. So we stay pretty busy.
Absolutely. I'm Glenn Harper. I'm CPA, and I've been in practice for about almost 34 years now. But the first 26 years, I was doing it one way, and then the light bulb came on when Julie and I's paths crossed on some things and changed how we do business as an entrepreneur in the tax advising and entrepreneurial world, and that has been life changing. And so we're on a mission to share that with as many people who listen.
That's fantastic. So with the entrepreneur, what do you find was difficult when you started growing?
I think people are difficult, right? Like if we have to all be honest, I think as entrepreneurs, we forget that people don't take that same responsibility with what is our business when they're employed. And I think that's a really hard concept to kind of like come to terms with as you're scaling and you're trying to get everybody to kind of come with is not everybody's going to take the same responsibility that you may take for certain tasks or relationships. And so it's really figuring out how to market that to your team to get the best out of them. I think that was one of the
big ones. And the other one is, we talk about this on our show, is just the getting out of your own way as an entrepreneur. Like we're so stuck in doing it the way we've always done it. We have a tight control and we can't, it's really hard for us to give up responsibility to someone else because nobody can do it better than us. So as an entrepreneur, that's the hardest thing, is to finally cut the cord and empower somebody else to help you. And generally, if they're good people and you give them the keys, they will make it work. But it's so hard as an entrepreneur to trust that.
It is. It's absolutely hard. But I think what I've learned is sometimes people have better ideas.
Always.
You want to hire smarter people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Grant Cardone, he talks about that, where he hired good people around him. So therefore he didn't have to know everything because he hired somebody to be able to do it for him. And he talks about how he grew from 3,000 to billions. And so getting out of our own way and trusting is a hard thing. So how did you get over that hump?
Well, it's an everyday thing, occurrence that we work and strive for every day, I think. But I think awareness is really good. And I think between the two of us, if he believes I'm getting in my own way, he'll call me out on it and vice versa. And I think really having someone there that you can trust to tell you the truth and not take, I don't take offense when he necessarily says it. It's like, well, why does he think that? Or, how do we work through this to kind of change that? And I think as you go through and you scale, Glenn talks a lot about like being an owner investor versus owner operator. And I think once you're able to kind of make that determination, it kind of helps you in your day-to-day life as to, what are those decisions and what do you do and how do you delegate?
I think the impetus for the change is that you recognize one is going to reach it. It took me a little bit longer to understand what was going on. But then once I realized it, I had to make that decision where doing it the way I've been doing it was not working. So I had to make a change. Nothing could be worse than where it was at. So making the changes, high dive, just do an ST plunge and jump in, and it's either going to work or it's not. And again, if you're surrounding yourself with good people, you believe in the people that are helping you, you believe in yourself and what you're trying to do, it's all going to work out.
When I think as an entrepreneur, like there is no failing, right?
Right.
We don't fail, we just pivot. So if something doesn't necessarily work, we're able to pivot, sometimes quick, sometimes not so quick, in regards to like, how do we tweak that to make it work, right? And I think entrepreneurs are really, really good at that and being able to pivot. Like I said, sometimes it's quick, sometimes it's not so quick.
I've made my middle name Pivot. So it's okay.
That's great. All right. So you did not start, because you've been in the business for 34 years. Clearly you're younger than that. So you didn't start together. How did you find each other and how did you decide to team up?
Well, this is a really great story.
Impressive.
So I had my master's in business and did the whole corporate America thing and had my first daughter and thought, I can't work 24/7. Like I was working in the medical world, and as you have a bunch of children, technically, when you're managing them. And a mutual friend had said that he was looking for someone to come manage his firm. And I thought that would be great. That's really a step back. And I'm going to come in guns a-blazing. And I said, I want to work 4 days a week. And this is kind of how I see this going. When I'm here, but I really want to create some balance. And I have no idea why, but he said yes. And so we kind of started, and I think it was like the second day that I was here, I was like, okay, how are we going to change this all around? Like we've really got to deep dive into this, because this isn't working. This isn't, especially coming from corporate America, where you're very rigid processes and procedures. There was not one process in this firm when I started. Like there was no training, there was no like how to, it was like, we'll figure it out. And as much as I loved that, I thought, well, I don't want the next person to have to do that. And so, yeah, I don't know if you'll tell the story the same.
This is how the story really went down. No, it was at a point where I knew I couldn't scale, and I had a partner, and we were just kind of on different pages. And it's really hard to do things if you're not aligned. And so I knew most of my successful clients had, quote, the practice manager, somebody that took operations over, so you as a solo practitioner or whatever could do your trade or service that you do, and you didn't have to worry about the other stuff. And I was in the market for that. And again, the mutual friend came along, she showed up, and she's like, I don't do windows, I don't do diapers, I don't work from the office. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a perfect fit. Let's make that happen. Mm-hmm. So again, I just had to say, okay, this is great. And then things had happened in the firm where we knew we would have to split from the partner, and we talked it through. And I said, I need you for this and this. Can you do that? She said, yes. And it was just like an instant mutual trust and respect to do that. And then I was
an FD plunge that he spoke about earlier.
I mean, high dive. And at that point, like, had a great practice, had a great book of business, just couldn't navigate how to operate that efficiently. And so I just said, here's the keys, go with it. And that's what we did. We split off, and we've been doing it ever since. And again, there's a daily grind to, navigate that, but it's impossible to do all those hats as an entrepreneur. You just can't do it. You have to have a team around you.
Yeah, because there's different types of people who work in a business. You have a visionary who they want to do stuff, and then you have, I call them the executor, right? The visionary gives the information, says make it happen. And so it sounds like that's kind of what you did and you made it happen. And so because of that, you now are building more businesses. And so how do you pivot, or how do you continue to watch the market and make changes so that you can be successful and open up new businesses? What do you do?
That's funny. We have this conversation probably daily. So I'm like the ideas person, like, ooh, opportunity. How do we make that work? And he's more of like, okay, Julie, let's really talk it through. About 6 months ago, I don't know, maybe 4 months ago, we went through just really a big exercise of like, what do we want out of all of this? Like, what are we striving for? Does it matter if we have one more business, or do we want 5 more businesses? What does that look like for us? And just really going back to like the core root of like, we want balance. I want to be at every single soccer, basketball, cheer, whatever that is. I want to be involved in my kids, but I also want to be a good role model for them too, and let them know how we go through that. And so there's a lot of opportunities. At the most part, we sit down, we chat, we talk it through. We're not always on the same page or have the same answer, but it's how does it affect us? How does it affect the rest of the businesses and firms and people that we have involved? And at the end of the day, if we can answer the why, and we can figure out how to make time, right? It's like so valuable and so hard to come by. Then the answer is usually yes, but it has to make sense, right? Like we're not going to go open up an ice cream shop probably, right? That doesn't really fit into like what we're trying to achieve. So really staying, I just think like we've really defined what like our vision and mission is personally, and really trying to make sure all those opportunities align. And it's hard. Like I want to say yes to everything, and he'll be the first one to tell you that I'm like, oh yeah. Like, oh yeah, we could definitely fit that in, or how do we make that work? But it's hard to say no.
I think the impetus for that is, as an entrepreneur, you're trying to decide if you're doing business or building a business, and as an entrepreneur, opportunity, the reason you're in that position as an entrepreneur, because you recognize opportunity. Opportunities flow to you every day by the gajillions. And until you define who you are and what you want to do, you will get diluted if you try to do too many things, and you're not going to do anything very well. So you got to stay in your lane. Once you kind of get something that you're working on to the point where it's sort of self-sufficient, you can grab the next thing. And that was one of our biggest things for me anyway, is I'm a phenomenal tax advisor, I'm a phenomenal entrepreneur advisor, tax code and how that works and managing and running a business, but nobody ever runs their own business the same way. They're good at their trade, but they're not good at running a business. So that thing is, once you learn how to actually run a business, that opens up everything now, because now you can pretty much pick and choose at will of all those other opportunities.
I love that. And that's so true. So we're going to pivot, because rarely do I have accountants on my show. And so when it comes to
we're a rare breed, I get it.
But it's like vital and crucial. But I want to shoot off some round robin type stuff, some quick answers, just so we can get through some of this stuff. But what should every business owner do before the year's end?
Oh my gosh, it's a loaded question. But the first thing that one should do is try to get in a position where they can maybe accurately reflect what their income will look like, so they can start the planning now, so they can take advantage of all the cool stuff in the tax code before the end of the year. Some of those things are sensitive to certain dates before the end of the year, because generally once you pass December 31st, the year's closed. The only thing you really have left to do is maybe a retirement plan if you set something up. It's identifying, as a business owner, do I need to buy any property, plant, or equipment, or things, or people? Am I going to invest in that? If I'm going to do it in January 3rd, maybe I should do it this year, so I can maybe put that on my taxes as a write-off. But with the uncertainty of the election, there's a lot of discourse of like, well, whoever gets elected, either we're going to have the same great tax code or we're going to get a more punitive one. Do we save those deductions? So really everybody's going to have everything in place. And for our clients, we have two paths that they're going to take depending on what the election goes. If it goes one way, we're going to do this. If it goes the other way, we're going to have to wait and see what that looks like and then make that decision. But it's really about, you can't make decisions as a business owner unless you've got good financials, if you've got a good projection where you're going to be, and you know what your cash flow looks like, what's earmarked for Uncle Sam, what's earmarked for your budget at home, what's earmarked for operating capital in your company. If you don't know those numbers, it's impossible to predict anything.
So true. So what should an entrepreneur be asking you?
As far as their tax advisor, it's literally has to be, hey, I think I'm going to make this much money. Am I profitable? What's my margin? What tax bracket I'm in? If I'm going to put this much effort into my product or service and the government's going to take 60% of it, 55, 60%, should I put that effort? And we go, well, if you just do this, this, and this, you could put that same effort and the government's only going to take 40% of that. Right. So it's just trying to predict and understand your business, what you do, where do you make money at, where do you spend your money? And that's just a deep dive. That's not just throwing out a financial statement. It's analyzing it and seeing what it means to you.
But I also think I think a little bit differently on this, and kind of how we coach our internal team is, we want the clients to call before they do anything, because it's really hard for us to react to something that's already been done. And so like, if you're thinking about doing any of the things that he's mentioned, or there's anything on your mind that you just need to talk through, call and talk through it, because there might be a better way to do it than you're thinking, right? Like, that's not what you're good at. Like, you shouldn't have to maybe make those decisions every time that comes up. Call them and make sure that, again, there just may be a different path that you could take that's going to give you a better outcome. And I think for me, if there's anything you're planning to doing before year end, or it's on your mind, or you're contemplating it, pick up the phone and just have the conversation.
People are scared to call their accountant because they're likely to get this bill, or they're not sure the value. Our clients, we have them on maintenance programs where most of those questions are already included, and they can feel free to ask because they just don't know. It's not something you can Google or ChatGPT it. You really need to talk to somebody who knows your situation to see if it's applicable. And it's a lot easier to, before the genie's out of the bottle and trying to put it back in, than to move with purpose and intent than trying to react to something. And that's the biggest thing as entrepreneurs. They move so fast, they just do things they don't think about. If they would have just done it a different way, it would save them thousands of dollars in tax or made their business more profitable.
I love that. And I'm in real estate. And so I was actually having a conversation with someone the other day, and she said that she has this friend that's going to go buy this multi-million-dollar property, because she needs a tax write-off. And so it's going to be an investment. And so I'm like, hold on one second. Have you ever heard of the Augusta rule? And she's like, no, I've never heard of that. And I said, okay. So I I explained it to her, but why don't you explain it to us?
The Augusta rule?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a nice little low-hanging fruit, and it's really only available for people who are self-employed, right? You can't do it if you have a real job. And it just says, look, you're going to take and use your place of residence and have your business rent that out for no more than 14 days. And you're going to find a fair market value for that rent. And let's say you live on the beachfront somewhere and places go for $1,000 a night. Well, you can charge your company rent $24,000. I'm sorry, $14,000, $1,000 a night.
And you say you're a numbers person.
I stumble a little bit, but I was thinking it was 2,000.
I know, I'm just
you
kidding.
can charge your company rent, the company deducts that, and then you don't have to report that as income. And it's just a way to shift a little bit of money. Now, again, most people probably live in a normal neighborhood where maybe it's only a couple $100 a night. It's not a huge amount of money for most people, but when you do all these little things, they add up to something significant. And sometimes it makes sense to do it, and sometimes it doesn't. There's rules you have to go by, how you account for that and how you track it and how you invoice it and do all those things. So most people just throw a number out there and they don't have any basis to back it up. Then when they get audited, they ruin it for everybody else. So if you do it the right way, and again, that's just one of the hundreds of strategies that are out there. You just have to pick the ones that work for you.
And you say hundreds, and that's why you need an accountant, because you know that, because that's your job and expertise.
Well, I'm going to say that you may not need an accountant. You need a business and tax advisor, not a preparer. So there's two pieces, right? There's a compliance where somebody is taking data and just entering it in the system. Then there's somebody who's taking that data, analyzing it, and putting it in the best position possible to create the best tax circumstances, the best business operations standpoint. That's the advisor. That's what people really want and what they need, but not a lot of accountants offer that. They want to just do the task of grinding out a tax return of financials. So you got to know the difference as an entrepreneur. And if you have that type of advisor in your stable of advisors, you're going to be very successful at that.
Yeah. One other trick I'd like you to talk about is if you own a business and you have kids under 18, and those kids can help you, even if they model for you. So can you kind of explain what that write-off is?
Yeah, remember the rule in from employing somebody or a business expenses, it has to be ordinary, necessary, reasonable, and have the intent. So there's ways, if you can employ a minor child in certain circumstances, you get to deduct their fee for their services, whatever that they may be doing. It's got to be legit. You write that down. You deduct it at the business level. The child takes it as income on the return, but if it's under a certain amount, they don't have to pay tax on it. The federal, maybe not even the state. You get to save Social Security tax on the earnings. There's all kinds of cool things you can do, but you got to make it legit. Under 18 is a cool a number that you can use, but what if your kid's going to college and they're still employed by you? You can still pay them, deduct what you're paying them, a really good salary, nothing abusive, because there's no room in the code to be abusive. You can be reasonable and do very well. And the government likes it like that. You don't have to be aggressive. And you can end up maybe deducting most all the tuition you're paying for the kids' tuition school by paying them a salary to do work. But they have to be gainfully employed, doing something valuable that's worth money, have to have the paperwork in order, and you can do that.
That's fantastic. So if somebody one of our listeners said, okay, I think I need a tax advisor, do you help other people?
Absolutely. We always want to work with people that recognize the value that's being brought to the table, and they're willing to listen and execute on the things that will make them better. And they would just have to get a hold of us through our website, harpercpaplus.com.
And that's what I was just going to ask you.
Yeah, but you might even know more that tackle. I don't get to.
You can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us, Facebook. I think something cool that your, listeners we have tons of blog posts. So we try to be really proactive in our education to our clients, our entrepreneurs, and anything that is relevant or that's coming down the line or that we're hearing about. We really try to educate and put it out there. So if you go to our website, you're going to see an entire section of blog posts that, we have the Augusta rules on there with paying your kids is on. All those things are on there to kind of help to decipher it. And what I would say, my words, so that the normal person can understand.
That was the beautiful part about this relationship, is all that stuff was in my head, Julie helped get that out of my head and put it into something tangible. So I didn't have to have those conversations with everybody, and really has helped us get the message out to our clients and all the people that we work with. Just been, like I said, that's the dynamic of why this thing works so well.
Fantastic. Well, Julie and Glenn, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. And we could probably talk all day and all the different tips and things that you have from your experience, but it's great advice and great information. So thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
We'll see you.
Yeah, see you later. And Mompreneurs, if you are running a business, you definitely need to have a plan, especially when it comes to your books, because auditing would not be a fun thing. So make sure that you find someone like Julie and Glenn, or reach out and talk with them and ask them questions and see what you can do so that you can run your business on the books efficiently. And when the audit comes, you're not going to be in trouble. So go out and make it a great day. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.